My stepsister sobbed that no one would ever love her, then tried to seduce my boyfriend, and my stepmom told me to hand him over. I, a 24-year-old female, need to get this off my chest because I keep wondering if I am the insane one here. This includes my stepmother Margaret, 52, my stepsister Clara, 22, my father Daniel, 55, and my partner of 3 years, Ethan, 26. It's critical to understand how we arrived here. When I was 8 years old, my biological mother abandoned us. She packed her luggage one morning while my father was at work and I was in school. I returned home to find a note on the kitchen counter stating that she could no longer take being a mother. My father had to explain to an 8-year-old why mommy was not coming back. He raised me alone for 2 years. When I was 10 years old, my father met Margaret during a parent-teacher conference. Her daughter, Clara, was in my grade but attended a different school. Clara was born with spinoipeda and needed a wheelchair. Margaret was newly divorced and was working as a substitute teacher to make ends meet. My father operated a successful small plumbing business. Margaret began to come over more frequently. She would invite Clara over for play dates, and eventually she would stay for dinner. I recall being overjoyed to have another girl around, especially one who appeared so kind. Clara was shy and quiet, but always respectful to grown-ups. She looked at you with large eyes that made you want to protect her. My father and Margaret married when I was 12. Margaret left her substitute teaching position because my father's business was flourishing and he could support all of us. We relocated to a larger house with wheelchair access for Clara. Margaret took care of the house while my father worked long hours. Clara and I shared the upstairs, but she had the room with the stair lift. The first several years were good. Margaret made sure I didn't feel excluded, even though Clara required more attention owing to her medical appointments and physical therapy sessions. She helped me with my homework, attended my soccer games, and ensured that I had all I needed for school. Clara and I got on well enough. We watched movies together, and she helped me with math while I assisted her with English. When I was 15, I met Ethan at a summer camp for disabled youngsters and their siblings. The camp organized activities that mixed typical and handicapped children. I was there for Clara, and Ethan was there for his younger brother, who has autism. Ethan was 17 at the time and had already started working part-time while finishing high school. He was gentle with Clara throughout the camp activities and made her giggle a lot. She appeared more extroverted around him than with others. After camp concluded, Ethan began visiting our house. He made friends with Clara first. Actually, she enjoyed talking to him about books and movies. He treated her like any other teenager, not as someone to be pitied. My father liked him since he was respectable and had a job. Margaret seems happy that Clara had gained a friend. Over the next 2 years, Ethan became a regular visitor to our house. He would visit after school and on weekends. Clara always looked up when he arrived. She began inquiring when he was coming over and became unhappy if he canceled plans. I didn't think much of it at the moment. I was preoccupied with my own high school activities and a part-time work in a clothing store. During my senior year, something changed. Ethan started asking me to hang out without Clara on occasion. We began talking more while she was not present. He helped me prepare for my SATs and drove me to job interviews. One evening in the spring, while we were sitting on the back porch after Clara had gone inside, he told me he had liked me for a while but didn't want to make things awkward because we were all friends. We began dating the summer before I left for college. Clara's demeanor altered instantly. She got grumpy and abrupt with me. Whether Ethan came over, she monopolized his attention and became irritated whether he wanted to spend time with both of us or just me. Margaret observed the shift and questioned me about it. I told her I suspected Clara had formed a crush on Ethan. Margaret nodded and said she would speak with her about it. I attended college 3 hours away while Ethan remained local and began working full-time at an auto repair shop. Clara began her senior year in high school. During my travels home, I observed Clara was still cool toward me, but Margaret said that she was simply adjusting to my absence at college. Ethan and I maintained a long-distance romance for 2 years. He paid me visits at school whenever he could, and I returned home on holidays and weekends. We got along well, despite the fact that the distance was difficult at times. Clara gradually warmed up to me again, but she continued to act weirdly while Ethan was present. After graduating from college, I briefly returned home to look for work. Ethan and I discussed moving in together after I found steady job. That's when things became odd again. Clara had recently started community college and was taking online classes because it was more convenient for mobility. She spent most of her time at home and Margaret had started working part-time at the library. Clara kept inquiring about Ethan. When was he coming over? Could she phone him and inquire about something? Did I imagine he'd want to watch a specific movie with her? Ethan stopped over one afternoon while I was attending a job interview. When I arrived home, Dad grabbed me aside and said Clara was acting strangely. She had recommended they watch a romantic movie and was attempting to persuade him to sit closer to her on the couch. When he kept his distance, she burst into tears, claiming that no one would ever love her due to her condition. Ethan felt bad, but claimed he had manufactured an excuse to depart early. I told Margaret about it that evening. She listened, then stated that she would handle it. She reminded me that Clara has minimal social engagement and may not grasp proper boundaries. I accepted the explanation and attempted to be more understanding. 2 weeks later, I started working for a marketing agency in the next town over. Ethan and I discovered a little apartment that we could afford together. Margaret's face became pale when I told her about our upcoming move. Clara began crying and dashed to her room. My father seemed pleased for us, but Margaret barely talked the remainder of the evening. Margaret's attitude cooled during the next month as Ethan and I prepared to move. She mentioned how I was departing my family and how Clara would miss me. Clara alternated between absolutely ignoring me and being excessively clingy. She began to attend more medical appointments and complain about pain more regularly. Clara had what Margaret described as a panic attack a week before we were planned to relocate. She hyperventilated and stated she couldn't take my departure. Margaret insisted on postponing the relocation until Clara felt more stable. My father supported Margaret's proposal. Ethan was frustrated, but he decided to wait a few more weeks. Clara's bouts increased in frequency throughout the course of those weeks. When relocation plans came up, she would have breathing problems or complain of extreme pain. Margaret booked further doctor appointments and stated that the physicians were concerned about Clara's stress levels. My father asked me to be patient and understanding. This pattern maintained for 2 months. Every time Ethan and I tried to schedule a move, Clara had a medical emergency. Margaret would add that the physicians advised against making any big changes in Clara's environment. I began to assume the incidents were not wholly medical, but I felt bad for believing so. Margaret approached me last month and requested a private conversation. She expressed concern about Clara's mental health and mentioned that doctors had indicated Clara would benefit from having Ethan around more often because he tended to calm her down. Margaret requested if Ethan might spend more time at home, possibly even moving into our extra room temporarily, to assist Clara acclimate to the changes. I told Margaret that Ethan was my boyfriend, not Clara's babysitter, and that we had separate plans. Margaret's expression changed. She expressed disappointment with my selfishness and that I did not comprehend how much Clara had been through in her life. She claimed Clara deserved to be happy as well, and that keeping Ethan away from her was cruel. That talk troubled me for several days. When I informed Ethan about it, he was stunned. He stated that he had never indicated to Clara that he was romantically interested in her, and Margaret's proposal made him uncomfortable. Yesterday, things came to a head. Margaret invited me to meet her in a coffee shop to talk. She appeared nervous, which is rare for her. She began by describing how much she had done for me over the years. How she had treated me like her own daughter, and how she had always prioritized my needs. Then she uttered something that made my blood turn cold. She told me Clara was madly in love with Ethan and that her medical episodes were genuine, but were caused by seeing Ethan with me. She explained that Clara had told her that she thought Ethan liked her as well, but was only with me out of responsibility because we had been friends before. Margaret then asked me to break up with Ethan. She explained that it would be a temporary sacrifice that would allow Clara to determine whether she and Ethan were compatible. She promised that if their relationship didn't work out, I could have Ethan back. She said this was my chance to repay her for all the years she had treated me like a mother. I stared at her for a long time, attempting to comprehend what she was asking. I informed her that Ethan was not a toy to be handed around, and that he had never expressed romantic interest in Clara. Margaret claimed that men didn't always know what they wanted, and that Ethan might surprise himself if he gave Clara a chance. Margaret burst into tears as I declined. She said I was selfish and didn't comprehend what it was like to see your child suffer. She said Clara might never find love because of her disabilities, but Ethan was gracious enough to look past it. She begged me to think about what was best for our family. I left the coffee shop without answering her. I drove directly to Ethan's job and told him everything. His reaction was fast and powerful. He described Margaret's request as inappropriate and manipulative. He told me that he had no love feelings for Clara, and would never have them. Now I'm here at our apartment, which we finally received last week despite the family drama, trying to figure out what to do next. Margaret has been calling and messaging me frequently. My father called this morning, asking why I was upsetting Margaret and what was so important that I couldn't compromise for Clara's sake. I haven't told my father exactly what Margaret requested me to do, because I don't think he'd believe me. Margaret has always been adept at portraying herself as the rational one who simply wants everyone to be happy. I'm also concerned about what will happen to Clara if everything comes out. But I can't stop thinking about Margaret's request. The more I think about it, the more I realize it has been happening for years. All those times Clara became upset when Ethan and I spent time together. All of the medical issues that conveniently occurred as we attempted to go forward with our relationship. Margaret called me selfish for desiring my own life. Am I wrong to decline Margaret's request? Is there a compromise I'm not seeing? I love my family, but I don't believe I can give up my relationship to make Clara happy. Ethan has been nothing but kind to her, but that does not imply he owes her a sexual connection. I keep debating whether I should tell my father what Margaret wanted me to do. Part of me believes he deserves to know, but I'm also terrified it will destroy our family. Margaret has been a nice stepmother to me in many respects, and I don't want to cause her or Clara any unnecessary pain. How would you handle my situation? Update 1. I didn't plan to be back so soon, but things have taken an unexpected turn. Thank you to everyone who responded to my first post. Many of you felt I should tell my father what Margaret had requested me to do, and you were correct. After posting, I spent several days attempting to figure out how to approach the situation. Margaret kept phoning and texting, imploring me to reconsider her plea. She began giving me articles on how difficult it is for people with disabilities to find love, and how critical it is for family members to support one another. Clara was also texting me, but her messages were different. She kept inquiring when Ethan would come over again, and if he had mentioned her. Ethan was becoming frustrated with the situation. He explained that the frequent family drama was damaging our relationship, and that we needed to set some limits. He suggested I speak with my father and get things out in the open. He was correct, but I kept putting it off for fear of what might happen. Last Tuesday, someone made the decision for me. I was at work when my father contacted me, upset and bewildered. He stated Margaret had informed him that Ethan and I had split up, and that Ethan was now interested in Clara. According to Margaret, I was being difficult and interfering with their new relationship. I was so shocked that I couldn't talk for a time. My father went on to add that Margaret was concerned that I was struggling to accept the shift and that I might need some time away from the family to digest it. He suggested that I stay at Ethan's apartment for a while to allow everyone time to acclimate. That's when I learned how far Margaret would go with her deception. She had planned to drive the issue by lying to my father and portraying it as a done thing. I informed my father that Margaret had lied to him and that Ethan and I were still very much together. He appeared perplexed and stated that he would need to talk to Margaret about the misunderstanding. I left work early and drove directly home. Margaret and Clara were in the kitchen, and as I entered they both fell quiet. I asked Margaret why she had informed my father that Ethan and I had broken up. She became uneasy and stated that there had been a misunderstanding. She claimed she was talking hypothetically about what might happen if I opted to prioritize Clara's needs. Clara sat at the kitchen table, glancing back and forth with us. I could tell she was aware of what was going on, but I was unsure how much Margaret had informed her about her plans. I asked Clara directly if Margaret had informed her that Ethan and I had split up. Clara nodded, saying Margaret had told her that Ethan would be spending more time with her, and less time with me. That's when I discovered Clara was involved, at least partially. Margaret had been preparing her for the desired conclusion, most likely raising her hopes. I questioned Clara if she truly believed Ethan had romantic feelings for her. She became defensive, claiming that Ethan was always kind to her and had told her she was beautiful and intelligent. I asked when Ethan had said such things. Clara described interactions that seemed friendly and supportive, rather than amorous. Ethan had never said anything untoward to her, but Margaret had obviously misinterpreted his generosity as romantic desire and shared her thoughts with Clara. When my father returned home from work, I wanted to speak with him quietly. I told him everything, from Margaret's request at the coffee shop to her lies about Ethan and I's breakup. My father listened without interrupting, and his look became more serious as I spoke. After I finished, my father remained silent for a long time. He then stated that he needed to hear Margaret's side of the story before making any judgments. He summoned Margaret into the room and asked her to explain what was happening. Margaret's tale was completely different than mine. She claimed I was rude to Clara about her love for Ethan, and that I threatened to keep Ethan away from the family if Clara didn't stop having crushes on him. She clarified that she had just suggested that I consider Clara's sentiments when making relationship decisions, not that I break up with Ethan. She said I misunderstood and exaggerated her request. Clara corroborated Margaret's version of events. She claimed I had been rude to her about Ethan, and Margaret was only trying to protect her. She claimed she never requested Ethan and me to break up, but it upset her when I acted as if she wasn't allowed to have feelings. My father stared between us, evidently trying to figure out who was telling the truth. He explained that this was a complicated scenario in which we all needed to calm down and find a way to work together. He recommended family counseling to help us communicate better. At that point, I understood Margaret had planned this confrontation. She had prepped Clara with a story that portrayed me as the villain and herself as a protecting mother. She'd undoubtedly been working on this story for weeks, knowing I'd ultimately tell my father about our talk. I informed my father that I would not be engaging in family counseling because Margaret had already demonstrated that she would lie to manipulate the situation. I explained that I needed some time apart from the family to consider whether I wanted to continue a connection with individuals who treated me this way. My father became enraged and accused me of being overly dramatic. He stated that families go through difficult times, and that walking away was not the solution. He accused me of being difficult and selfish, as my biological mother had been. That comment hit me hard. I'd spent my entire youth trying not to be like my original mother, who had abandoned us when things became tough. But I recognized that remaining in a position in which I was being misled and lied to was not loyalty, it was simply tolerating abuse. I packed my stuff and went to stay with Ethan. That was 2 weeks ago, and I have not returned to the house since. My father has called multiple times, wanting me to come home and talk things out. Margaret has sent messages apologizing for the misunderstanding and stating that she only wants the best for everyone. Clara texted to ask why I am being so harsh to the family. But this is what really upsets me. None of them have admitted what truly occurred. Margaret has not revealed that she asked me to break up with Ethan. Clara has not admitted that she hoped I would. My father has not admitted that Margaret lied to him about Ethan and my breakup. Instead, they're all acting as if this is just a family feud that got out of control. They want me to return and pretend nothing happened, to resume normalcy. But I can't do it now that I know Margaret's capabilities and how far she's willing to go to accomplish what she wants for Clara. Ethan has been absolutely supportive throughout this. He's made it obvious that he doesn't want anything to do with Margaret's manipulation and is committed to our partnership. He's also offered to speak with my father personally about what happened, but I'm not sure it would help at this time. The hardest aspect is that I still love my family, despite everything that has transpired. Margaret cared for me for many years and was not always manipulative. Clara is my sister, even if she isn't dealing with this situation well. My father reared me and worked hard to provide for our family. However, I am beginning to see that love does not imply condoning hurtful treatment. Margaret crossed a line when she asked me to give up my relationship for Clara's pleasure. She broke another line when she lied to my father and attempted to manipulate the situation to achieve her goals. I don't know what will happen next. My father has stated that if I do not return home and straighten things out with the family, he will discontinue financial assistance for me. Margaret and Clara are acting as if I was the one who started this whole issue by being selfish and unforgiving. Part of me wonders whether I should just return and attempt to make peace. It would be easier than dealing with all of the strife and uncertainty. But every time I think about it, I recall Margaret sitting across from me in that coffee shop, asking me to break up with my boyfriend so that her daughter might have him. I recall the look in her eyes as she lied to my father about what had transpired. I can't go back to pretending everything was fine. I can't go back to avoiding Clara's emotions or accepting Margaret's manipulation as normal family dynamics. So I guess I'm seeking for advice again. How do you restore your life if your family turns on you for refusing to be manipulated? How do you deal with the guilt of stepping away from folks who say they love you but don't respect your boundaries? Update 2. I wish I could say things improved following my last report, but they really deteriorated significantly before improving. I'm writing from my new apartment, which I share with Ethan, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. After my last post, I was away from my family for almost 3 weeks. During that time, Margaret intensified her efforts to persuade me to return. She began calling my workplace, informing my supervisor that there was a family emergency and that I needed to get home immediately. When my supervisor handed me the messages, I had to explain that there was no emergency and my stepmother was lying. Margaret also reached out to some of my college buddies via social media. She told them I was experiencing a mental breakdown and requested them to persuade me to return home. Several friends called me, concerned, and I had to explain the true situation to them. It was awkward and stressful. The worst aspect was what she did to Ethan. Margaret managed to get his work phone number and called his employer. She informed Ethan's supervisor that he had acted inappropriately with a disabled family member and that the family was considering filing charges. Ethan's employer summoned him to the office the next day for an awkward chat. Ethan had to describe the entire issue to his manager, including presenting text exchanges between us proving we were in a committed relationship. Fortunately, his boss trusted him and recognized that this was a family dispute rather than a criminal matter. However, Ethan was shocked by the incident, which made us both realize how far Margaret was willing to go. That experience convinced me that I needed to take more serious measures. I couldn't continue to live in limbo while Margaret tried to destroy my relationship and reputation. I resolved to write a lengthy letter to my father, outlining everything that had happened, including Margaret's initial request, and all of her following lies and manipulations. In the letter, I told my father that I loved him but couldn't have a relationship with him if he kept enabling Margaret's conduct. I stated that I was willing to keep a connection with him independent from Margaret and Clara, but only if he admitted what had transpired and stopped expecting me to tolerate Margaret's manipulation. I also sent a letter to Clara. I told her that I didn't blame her for having feelings for Ethan, but she needed to understand that those feelings did not give her the right to be in my relationship. I told her I wished she could find happiness with someone who genuinely wanted to be with her, but that person would never be Ethan. I sent both letters and waited. For a week I had heard nothing. Then my father called and requested to meet me for coffee. He sounded exhausted and older than I recall. When we met, my father looked like he hadn't slept well. He claimed he questioned Margaret about what I had stated in my letter. Initially, she denied everything and claimed I was lying to turn him against her. But as he probed her for details about specific conversations, her story began to unravel. My father claimed that the turning point came when he asked Margaret directly if she had ever asked me to break up with Ethan. Margaret eventually revealed that she had advised that I prioritize Clara's happiness, but she argued that it was an acceptable request from one family member to another. When my father asked her why she had lied to him about Ethan and I breaking up, Margaret explained that she had been trying to spare Clara from disappointment and that she believed I would finally see things her way. She claimed she had never planned for things to get that complex. My father expressed regret that he had not believed me right away. He claimed Margaret had always been so skilled at explaining things in a way that made her appear sensible and compassionate that he had come to rely on her judgment above his own intuition. He apologized for comparing me to my biological mother and suggested we concentrate on mending our relationship. I informed my father that while I appreciated his apologies, I needed to see actual improvements before I could trust him again. I told him he needed to set limits with Margaret about her behavior toward me and Ethan, and he shouldn't expect me to sacrifice my own happiness for Clara's emotional needs. My father agreed to those conditions, but he also asked if I would consider giving the family another chance to sort things out. He stated Margaret apologized and wanted to make things right. He suggested that we all get down and have an honest chat about what had happened. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a single family meeting. I told my father it would be at a neutral site, not their house, and that Ethan would accompany me. I also stated that if Margaret lied or tried to manipulate the situation during the discussion, I would leave without giving them another chance. The encounter was disastrous. We met at a restaurant, and Margaret had prepared an entire speech about how much she loved me and apologized for any misunderstandings. But when I pressed her to explicitly state that she had asked me to break up with Ethan, she couldn't. Instead, Margaret continued stating that she merely wanted me to think about Clara's sentiments, or that she had suggested I think about what was best for the entire family. She refused to use the word breakup, despite the fact that it was exactly what she had requested me to do. Clara was even worse. She accused me of being jealous of her connection with Ethan and attempting to keep them apart because I was insecure. She said Ethan had been leading her on by being kind to her, and I was forcing him to pretend he didn't have feelings for her. Ethan eventually spoke up, telling Clara that he was never romantically interested in her and never would be. He explained that he had been kind to her as a friend and as my sister, but she had mistaken his friendship as anything more. Clara burst into tears, explaining that Ethan was only saying that because I was influencing him. Margaret sprang to Clara's defense, claiming Ethan was being unkind to a vulnerable person. She stated she couldn't imagine Ethan would reject Clara only because of her disabilities. That's when I understood that nothing had changed. Margaret and Clara were still living a fantasy in which Ethan secretly desired to be with Clara, but was thwarted by mean, selfish me. They had learned nothing from the previous few months of conflict. I stepped up to leave, but my father encouraged me to stay and keep trying. He stated that families should work through their problems rather than giving up when things were unpleasant. I informed him that I had tried to sort out the problem, but Margaret and Clara refused to accept reality. As we walked out of the restaurant, Margaret told me that she would never give up on her daughter's happiness. She stated I could go away as my real mother did, but she would always fight for Clara. That comment was the last straw for me. Margaret saw me as a hindrance to Clara's happiness, rather than as the daughter she was expected to love and protect. No matter what I did or how much I sacrificed, it would never be enough because Margaret would always choose Clara's desires over mine. Ethan and I left town the following day. We were intending to relocate anyway because Ethan had received a job offer in another city. The work paid better and provided us with a fresh start away from the family strife. We've been here for 6 weeks, and it's been serene. No manipulative phone calls, no guilt trips about family loyalty, and no one asking me to give up my happiness for someone else's. Ethan enjoys his new career, and I found work at a marketing agency that is far superior to my previous position. My father has called a few times. Our chats have been cordial but distant. He keeps hoping that I will change my mind regarding Margaret and Clara, but I have made it obvious that this will not happen. I told him he was free to visit us here if he wanted to keep a connection with me, but I would not be returning to deal with Margaret's manipulation. Margaret sent me a farewell text message last week. She expressed her wish that I was content with my decision to leave my family for a man who would most likely abandon me ultimately. She claimed Clara was heartbroken and blamed me for being selfish and harsh. After that, I blocked her number. I also blocked Clara, who had been messaging me about how unjust I was being and how much I was harming the family by remaining away. The point is, I no longer feel guilty. For years I accepted that my position in the family was to be understanding, adaptable, and willing to make sacrifices for Clara's needs. I assumed it was what good sisters did, and what appreciative daughters owed their stepmother. But now I understand that Margaret never considered me her daughter. She regarded me as a resource that Clara might profit from. When I ceased being useful in that way, she was willing to spread lies about me, damage my relationship, and attempt to harm my reputation. Clara never thought of me as her sister. She regarded me as a competitor for Ethan's attention, and finally as a barrier to obtaining what she desired. She was willing to take part in Margaret's deception and manipulation because it served her interests. My father was so committed to keeping the harmony in his household that he was willing to compromise my well-being rather than confront Margaret's actions. He wanted me to continue absorbing Margaret's manipulation so he wouldn't have to cope with the conflict of confronting her. None of that was love, despite everyone's claims. Love does not require you to give up your happiness for someone else's convenience. Love does not force you to accept falsehoods and manipulation in order to maintain family unity. I'm starting a new life with individuals that genuinely care about my well-being. Ethan has never asked me to give up anything for his benefit, and he has never lied to me or attempted to manipulate me. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. I'm not sure if my father will ever comprehend what happened, or if he'll always blame me for splitting up the family. But I have no influence over his choices. I can only manage my own actions, therefore I prefer to surround myself with people that treat me with respect and honesty. Update 3. I'm writing this final update to bring this chapter of my life to an end and to address some of the issues that have been raised. It's been 6 months since I moved away with Ethan, and I can honestly say that it was the best decision I ever made. Life here has been good. Ethan was promoted at his job, and we are saving money to buy a house. I work for a company where my supervisor values my abilities and does not have to deal with family members contacting about bogus problems. We've become friends with our neighbors and joined a hiking group. I never imagined I could have such a normal, quiet existence. My father came to visit us twice. The first visit was unpleasant because he kept bringing up Margaret and Clara, asking whether I missed them and if I was willing to forgive them. He appeared to assume that I had had enough time to recover from what had transpired. I had to explain that this was not about harboring grudges, but about protecting oneself from people who have demonstrated a willingness to lie and mislead in order to obtain their desired outcome. The second appointment went well. My father seemed to realize I wasn't coming back, so he stopped trying to persuade me to reconcile with Margaret and Clara. We talked about other things for a few hours, and it felt like we were back in our typical father-daughter connection. He stated he was proud of the life Ethan and I were creating together, but my father also told me several things that reinforced I had made the right decision to leave. Apparently, once I moved away, Clara was confident Ethan would realize he missed her and return for her. Margaret reinforced this dream, suggesting they drive to our new city to surprise him. My father put a halt to that idea, but only because he was concerned about how it would appear if they arrived up unexpectedly. He didn't seem to grasp that the idea was unacceptable, because Ethan had expressed his feelings clearly, and stalking someone is bad no matter how it appears. Margaret also began telling others in their social circle that I had turned against the family because I couldn't accept Clara's happiness. According to my father, she was portraying herself as the patient mother whose disabled kid was being bullied by a jealous stepsister. Some people believed her narrative, which was not surprising to me. Clara eventually began dating someone she met in an online support group for people with disabilities. My father claimed she seemed pleased with this new person. And Margaret was overjoyed that Clara was finally receiving the attention she deserved. Apparently, neither of them recognized the irony in Clara's ability to find someone who wanted to be with her once she quit obsessing over Ethan. My father asked if I would consider congratulating Clara on her new relationship. I told him no. Clara had cooperated in Margaret's attempts to manipulate and control my life, and she had never apologized or admitted her mistakes. The fact that she had discovered pleasure did not excuse her previous actions. Margaret attempted one final manipulation about 3 months ago. She messaged me through my father, stating Clara was getting married, and asked me to be her maid of honor. The message stated that here was my opportunity to be the bigger person and demonstrate that family was more important than previous arguments. I informed my dad to inform Margaret that I would not be attending Clara's wedding in any manner. I also told him that if Margaret attempted to contact me again through him or anyone else, I would cut off contact with him as well. I had set clear boundaries, and I was not going to let Margaret continue to break them just because she wore a bridal gown during her manipulation. My father was disappointed, but said he understood. He also confessed that he thought Margaret's request was improper considering what had occurred. It was the first time he had directly critiqued Margaret's behavior, and it meant a lot to me that he could now see her clearly. Clara got married 2 weeks ago. My father gave me a snapshot from the wedding, and Clara appeared to be really delighted with her new spouse. I was happy for her, but I did not regret not being present. That wedding reflected a family that had never seen me as anything more than a tool for Clara's advantage. Ethan and I are getting engaged next month. We're arranging a little ceremony for a few close pals. My father will be invited, but Margaret and Clara will not. I've learned that you get to select who observes the most significant moments in your life, and I choose to surround myself with individuals who have earned the right to be present. Some may believe I'm being overly harsh, or that I should have tried more to make things work with my family. But I knew that pushing harder would have only resulted in more manipulation and abuse. Margaret would never have ceased attempting to control my life for Clara's sake. Clara would never have stopped considering me as a barrier to her happiness. The truth is that Margaret and Clara did not love me. They appreciated what I could do for them and made their lives easier. When I ceased being useful in that way, they were willing to spread lies about me, undermine my relationship, and isolate me from anyone who supported me. My father adored me, but he cherished his tranquil household more. He was willing to risk my safety to avoid disagreement with Margaret. That is not the love I deserved. And it is not the love I am ready to accept any longer. I don't wake up every morning wondering what manipulation Margaret will try next, or what emotional crisis Clara will have if she doesn't get her way. I don't have to walk on eggshells or give up my own needs to keep the peace. I don't have to pretend that lies, misunderstandings, or abuse constitute love. Instead, I wake up next to someone who has never asked me to be less than myself for his benefit. I work in an environment where my efforts are valued. My friends respect and support my boundaries and decisions. I have an honest relationship with my father, even if we are not as close as we once were. This is what happens when you refuse to accept hurtful treatment from those who pretend to love you. This is what it looks like when you prioritize your personal well-being over others' comfort. I'm not telling my story to gain sympathy or to persuade anyone that I made the correct decision. I'm publishing it because I wish someone had told me years ago that family members that control and lie to you aren't behaving out of love, regardless of what they claim. I wish someone had warned me that leaving toxic people does not mean giving up on family. It's about protecting yourself so you may have healthy relationships. If family members are asking you to sacrifice your happiness for someone else's benefit, or if individuals are lying about you to get what they want, you do not have to stay and accept it. You do not owe somebody your peace of mind or well-being simply because you share DNA or were raised by them. Margaret cared for me for many years, and I'm grateful. But appreciation does not imply that I had to let her dictate my adult life or ruin my relationship. Clara is disabled and experiences obstacles that I do not have to cope with, and I feel compassion for her. However, her challenges did not grant her the right to my lover or to join in attempts to manipulate me. My father worked hard to provide for our family when my biological mother departed, and I am grateful for everything he did. But his sacrifices did not imply that I had to sacrifice myself to keep his second wife happy. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most will harm you the most because they believe their love gives them the power to control you. Sometimes walking away is the only way to preserve yourself. I don't think Margaret, Clara, or my father will ever realize what they did wrong. I'm not sure whether they will ever recognize that their treatment of me was wrong and detrimental, but I don't need their understanding or apologies to move on with my life. I have Ethan, who treats me like a partner rather than a possession. My buddies respect my boundaries. My skills are valued at my current employment. I have a future that belongs to me, not to others who believe they know what is best for me. That is enough. That is more than enough. That was all I needed, but I was reluctant to ask for it because I believed I owed others my loyalty, even if they didn't deserve it. If anyone reading this is coping with family members who manipulate, lie, or attempt to dominate their lives, please know that you deserve better. You deserve partnerships based on respect and honesty. You deserve the freedom to make your own life decisions without having to deal with the emotions of others. You do not need to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to give up your happiness to express your love. You do not have to stay in hurtful situations simply because it is difficult to leave. This is my final update because this chapter of my life has concluded. I'm no longer the girl who tries to make everyone happy at her own expense. I am not the daughter who tolerated manipulation because she was grateful for a roof over her head. I'm not the sister who prioritizes someone else's desires over her own. I'm simply Olivia, building a life with someone who loves me unconditionally and making decisions based on what's best for me, rather than what's easier for others. It took longer than it should have, but I got here. And if you're reading this and see yourself in my tale, you can do it too.